Is The Undertaker the greatest WrestleMania superstar of all time? You're about to find out. This is Fred Richani of TSC News, your home for pro wrestling news updates, reviews, interviews, and everything in between. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. We're going to look back at the legendary WrestleMania career of The Undertaker. And going back in time, watching all these matches, I realized something. While The Undertaker is a surefire Hall of Famer, one of the best to ever do it, especially as a big man and enduring gimmick, man, oh man, was the first half of his WrestleMania career pretty damn rough from a match quality standpoint. Win-loss record, great. Who he beat, pretty damn impressive. But match quality in the ring, bell to bell, whew, it was rough. And I'd attribute it mostly to his opponents. Okay, and the fact that with his gimmick, he didn't really have to sell or, show any vulnerability. That's how he was booked and everything. But yeah, it was a little rough at the beginning. So let's start from the beginning. WrestleMania 7 taking on Jimmy Superfly Snuka. He defeated Jimmy Snuka in short order to start the streak at 1-0. This took place March 24th, 1991. Fast forward to April 5th, 1992. WrestleMania 8 defeating Jake the Snake Roberts. More or less, these two were glorified squash matches. WrestleMania in 1993. This was WrestleMania 9. This was a hemorrhoid of a match and a pretty bad WrestleMania overall, which featured Hulk Hogan at the end, last minute, defeating Yokozuna. It's kind of stealing Bret Hart's moment. It was not a good WrestleMania. That was the one that took place in Caesar's Palace, where Jim Ross and others were in togas. If you want to watch the show and cringe on WWE Network, by all means, but I wouldn't recommend it. He defeated Giant Gonzalez via disqualification. Not a good match, but extended his streak to 3-0. WrestleMania 11 in 1995, he defeated King Kong Bundy, who was well over the hill at that point, to go 4-0. And then in March 31st, 1996, the home of the epic Iron Man match between Shawn Michaels and Bret the Hitman Hart at the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California, we saw The Undertaker defeat Diesel in about 16 minutes, 46 seconds. And this was arguably the first good WrestleMania match of The Undertaker's WWE career. Good stuff here. Diesel, a.k.a. Kevin Nash, ended up going to WCW and forming a little-known group by the name of the NWO with Hulk Hogan and Scott Hall. You may have heard of them. Too sweet. We had 1997 WrestleMania 13. Not a good WrestleMania outside of a little classic match. Bret the Hitman Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Absolute classic. Classic double turn. Bret Hart turned heel and formed the Epic Hart Foundation. Stone Cold Steve Austin became a made man, and as they say, the rest is history. But the actual main event was The Undertaker versus Psycho Sid. Not a good match at all. Sid was coming into this match as the two-time WWE champion, the reigning champion, and The Undertaker got the win. And this was significant not only because Undertaker was in the very last match and he won the world title, but it kicked off, I think, a very underrated 97 for Undertaker, who had a great 5-month run as champion. And it was his first WWE title win in 6 years. He had captured the title back in 1991 from Hulk Hogan. And it's kind of crazy if you really think about it, right? He captured the world title, lost it 6 days later to Hulk Hogan at this Tuesday in Texas, and then he never held the world title for another 6 long years. And that's the crazy part about The Undertaker, right? He's a character that was booked so well, that was so well protected. And the guy behind the character, Mark Calloway, was so good at playing the character, being booked at the top, carrying himself like a top guy, that he really didn't need any type of championship. But this was a downtime in the business. Of course, Steve Austin not getting the win over Bret Hart, but being made a star in the match with Bret Hart started to help turn business around, not just in the ring and with the fans coming in, but creatively. And I thought Undertaker, again, was a very underrated and strong champion in 1997, and that definitely kept things interesting. And then we go on to 1998, WrestleMania 14, defeating Kane in his WrestleMania debut. This match, I don't know if it's aged that well. This took place at the Fleet Center in Boston, Massachusetts. I thought it was a pretty good match at the time growing up as a kid. two behemoths colliding. Nowadays, with fans being a little jaded and seeing Kane for all this time and Undertaker all this time, I'm not really sure if this match holds up that much. But at the time, when Kane was booked like an absolute monster, and he didn't know what he looked like, and he had the burned face, so to speak, and he was, Undertaker's brother, and Undertaker apparently killed his parents. I mean, this was some pretty powerful stuff leading into WrestleMania 14. We had a horrible, horrible, oh my God, my eyes are burning just thinking about how I watched this earlier. Undertaker versus the Big Freakin Bossman. Now, Big Bossman is one of the best big men of all time in pro wrestling, and God rest his soul. He has passed away, a WWE Hall of Famer, and he's a guy who really deserves a lot of credit. He had a great feud with Hulk Hogan back in the day, did some good stuff, but here, 1999, kind of over the hill, wasn't a good match at all. And at the end, Big Bossman was hung from the Hell in a Cell. Or hung from the top. Yeah, hung from the top of the Hell in a Cell. Like, literally hung. Which is kind of creepy now that the guy passed away. Granted, he didn't pass away via, that. But it was creepy. It was very creepy. It was very awkward. The match wasn't good. No bueno. Hell in a Cell matches at WrestleMania, hit or miss, and this was definitely a miss. 2001. He went 9-0, defeating Triple H at WrestleMania 17 at the Roy Astrodome in Houston, Texas. Arguably the greatest WrestleMania from top to bottom of all time. Took place about a week after WCW was officially purchased by WWE. Some people would say this is the weakest of their three matches at WrestleMania, but I really liked this at the time, and it was cool, and it had a notable spot where they were fighting, on the stage and near the studio equipment and everything, near the fans. And Undertaker chokeslammed Triple H off of the platform onto the floor. That looked like it sucked for Triple H, but Undertaker got the win here. I should note this was the first WrestleMania appearance for him as his American Badass Spiker character. Back at WrestleMania 18, Toronto Skydome, home of Hogan versus Rock and Jericho versus Triple H for the undisputed title. Undertaker defeated the Nature Boy Ric Flair. This was a no DQ match. Really underrated match. I wouldn't say it was the best match of either guy's career or anything like that, but it was a fun, violent affair while it lasted. WrestleMania 19, okay match. It was Undertaker defeating A-Train, a.k.a. Tensai, a.k.a. Albert, a.k.a. Matt Bloom, and The Big Show in a 2-on-1 handicap match to extend his streak to 11-0. This was also his appearance as the American Badass along with 18 and 17. And the reason that this was a handicap match is because originally it was the debuting Nathan Jones teaming up with The Undertaker to take on Big Show and A-Train. But somebody backstage, probably Vince McMahon and the agent, said, "Holy crap, Nathan Jones is not ready for prime time." He was this big-ass dude from Australia. He spent like a decade or so in prison. He was called the Colossus of Boggo Road because he had committed armed robbery and he was a notorious dude in prison. He had done some independent tours in Australia, had a lot of buzz behind him, but he just was not ready. And fun fact, at the end of 2003, it turns out he wasn't ready, period. And he ended up leaving the business. I think he worked a handful of matches since then. He's done some stunt work. He's been in a few different films. I think 300. Some of those like Game of Thrones-esque films. He's had a few cameos and those. So he seems to be doing okay for himself, but not ready for primetime here. Never was ready for primetime, and Undertaker had to pick up the slack, and it ended up working out for him because he got the win and extended his streak, but not a great match. WrestleMania 20, March 14, 2004. I remember this WrestleMania vividly. It took place in my neck of the woods, MSG, Madison Square Garden, and The Undertaker defeated Kane in a pretty much a glorified squash match to win, but the big story here was it was the return of Paul Bearer, and it was the return of the Deadman Undertaker character. You see, he had been the American Badass for a few years. Vince McMahon wanted him to turn back to the Deadman. How do you get there? Well, you get there in an Undertaker-style way. Survivor Series 2003, Undertaker took on Vince McMahon, buried alive match. What happened? Kane, who was newly unmasked, interfered, buried him alive, and that led to Undertaker versus Kane, WrestleMania 20. Not at the level of the WrestleMania 14 match at all, but it served its purpose. It established Undertaker as the dead man. He did his trademark spots. It was a reintroduction of the character, and it was pretty damn great. We had his first Really good WrestleMania match in quite some time. Maybe his best WrestleMania match up to this point. WrestleMania 21, 2005, Staples Center, Los Angeles, California. He took on the legend killer, Randy Orton, defeated him to go 13-0 at WrestleMania. There's a notable spot in this match where Undertaker went for the chokeslam and Randy Orton reversed it into an RKO out of nowhere. That was probably the first, maybe not the first, but one of the first notable RKO out of nowhere spots before it became this big meme and huge craze and everything. Just awesome stuff. Great match. I really enjoyed this one. It ages very well. The problem is they kept feuding throughout 2005, and it got to the point where it was just super hokey, super awkward. Just by the time they got to Hell in a Cell at the end of the year, Armageddon 2005, this feud was past its expiration date. And to top it all off, I believe Cowboy Bob Orton Sr., right, or Jr., I should say, who was accompanying Randy Orton, being his manager, in addition to being his real-life father, he bled in that Hell in a Cell match in December with The Undertaker and Randy Orton, and apparently didn't tell anybody that, hey, I got a form of hepatitis, and, well, Cowboy Bob was vamoosed, and thankfully Undertaker was okay, but, whew, yeah, I bet looking back, The Undertaker probably wishes this feud ended right here at WrestleMania 21, because this was some good stuff, and, yeah, the rest of the year, not so much. And yes, folks, I do know way too much obscure pro wrestling knowledge, hence why I'm hosting this damn show. For your entertainment, I hope. We had Undertaker Mark Henry casket match, WrestleMania 22. This took place in Chicago in 2006. Decent stuff. Not great. Definitely not the level of the Orton match. And then we had the best WrestleMania match for The Undertaker up to that point in 2007. One of my all-time favorite matches, and I personally think this is an extremely underrated WrestleMania match. Undertaker versus Batista. Going into this match, Batista did not have a good in-ring year for WWE. The last 12 months or so, not so good. Now, he had a nice stretch in 2005. He was still kind of green when he got put over by Triple H at WrestleMania 21, but he had a ton of momentum. Then he got injured. Then he came back in 06, and more or less had a string of boring matches. Boring matches with Booker T, boring matches with JBL, boring matches with all these guys. You know what? If I recall correctly, he did have a pretty good match with Mr. Anderson, Mr. Ken Kennedy at Royal Rumble, so that was pretty good. But for the most part, his in-ring stuff was lacking, and I got a lot of love for Big Dave, but he had a rough stretch there. But coming into this match with The Undertaker, you could tell this dude was motivated. You could tell he was pissed off at the fact that he did not get the main event slot with The Undertaker. And I personally think they should have gotten that slot. John Cena and Shawn Michaels ended up closing out that show, which is most famous for the Donald Trump, Vince McMahon hair versus hair thing with Umaga and Bobby Lashley. Steve Austin was special referee, but this was an epic match. This is, in my opinion, one of the greatest WrestleManias of all time, one of the most eventful WrestleManias of all time. The Undertaker got the win, got the world title, the big gold belt, the WCW title version of the WWE World Title for the first time in his career. It was an awesome visual, and what I loved about this match was the fact that I never heard a better Michael Cole call at that time. Michael Cole, he's a hit or miss sometimes. Some people think he's annoying. Some people think he's stale. Some people really like him. I think this is one of the best commentary jobs Michael Cole has ever done. So if you go back and watch this on the network, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the commentary. But Undertaker got the win. I think it should have closed out the show because this was also the first time Undertaker had won the world title since 2002. And the first time that he had won it with his Deadman character at WrestleMania since 1997. And overall, the first time the Deadman character held the world title since 1999. So, historically, I think it should have been Undertaker and Batista closing out the show, but Shawn Michaels, John Cena, they had one hell of a match as well. We then get to the next year where Undertaker wins the world title again. WrestleMania 24, 2008, the very last match of the event taking place at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, Florida. This was a great match against Edge. Adam Edge Copeland, WWE Hall of Famer. Just great stuff. Edge, the dastardly heel. Undertaker, the valiant, cowboy-like, badass babyface. Just tremendous stuff. We even had a cameo by Zack Ryder and Kurt Hawkins, who were the lackeys of Edge at the time. Just I don't know what else to say other than it was a great match. I recently watched this again. Really holds up well. You could take your pick whether this was better than the Batista match, but how can you refuse to watch a great match between one of the greatest heels of all time and one of the greatest characters of all time? Whew. Well, they're both two of the greatest characters of all time, but just, at their peaks, man. It's funny because people say, well, Undertaker's at his peak in 98 or 99 or this and that and the other thing, but he got better with age as time went along in the late 2000s. It's kind of crazy, right? We look at the Randy Orton match. We look at the Batista match. Now we get to the Edge match. And this guy's just having great matches every year. He's taking Shawn Michaels' place as Mr. WrestleMania. And speaking of Shawn Michaels, we had Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25, which is highly regarded as the greatest WWE match of all time, maybe the greatest pro wrestling match of all time. I may have seen better matches bell to bell, and the Okada Omega match might have been better bell to bell, like from an in-ring standpoint, right? Maybe John Cena. I think John Cena and CM Punk had a great match as well a couple years later. I mean, there's been a lot of great WWE matches. Forget New Japan and Lucha Libre and all around the world. Let's just keep it in WWE for a second. There may be better matches bell to bell, right? Technically, high flying, what have you, but I think there are very few matches that have the total package, the psychology, the stature. These are two iconic legends during the brand extension era, right? The brand split, who had not faced each other in a one-on-one match since January of 1998, when ironically, Shawn Michaels injured his back and would later be forced to retire for 4+ years away from the business. Now, they had confronted each other. They had been the final two at Royal Rumble 2007, which I think is the greatest closing sequence in Royal Rumble history. Just wonderful stuff. If you've never seen Royal Rumble 2007, go back and watch that. Just incredible stuff. But here they are in a one-on-one setting, not a tag match, not the Royal Rumble. No. And keep in mind, this is at the time where I think both guys, for the most part, are better than they were back in 1998. And not only are they better, but they're older, they're wiser, which in turn makes them smarter workers. Although I will say this, there was one spot in the match which was not good, where Undertaker went for his trademark dive, hit a cameraman. It was a guy, I think it was actually Jimmy Snuka's son, Jimmy Snuka Jr. I think Deuce and Domino, for those that remember the former tag team champions. Yeah, I believe that was him posing as a cameraman, and Undertaker landed on him. But the problem is Undertaker landed right on his head, and I know it was planned that Undertaker was supposed to be down for a little while, but it seemed like an eternity. And I remember watching it at the time with my friends, thinking, is Undertaker really dead? Does he have his neck broken? Is he paralyzed? It was just a scary part of the match. So if you consider that match a classic, but maybe want to take it down a notch, right, everything's subjective. I think it's one of the greatest matches of all time. But if you want to take it down a notch for that moment, I totally understand, because it was a little scary. It did make you legitimately worried, but it also added to the realism. Undertaker wanting to prove he's the best. Shawn Michaels wanted to prove he's the best. Both guys doing whatever it takes to prove that they are the best. There was a point in the match where Undertaker hit a tombstone, and then Jim Ross made the greatest call of his career, in my opinion. I just had an out-of-body experience when Shawn Michaels kicked out of the tombstone. Just epic, epic stuff. Spoiler alert, Undertaker wins. And this set up a rematch at WrestleMania 26 where Shawn Michaels put his career on the line against The Undertaker. This was great. And this was set up back in late 2009. Shawn Michaels and Undertaker won the Slammy Award for Match of the Year. Shawn Michaels challenged him at the podium. Undertaker, of course, wasn't there. Shawn Michaels kept challenging him again. Couldn't get it. Then finally, it got to the point where Shawn Michaels just got super pissed. He lost the Royal Rumble. He was frustrated. He walked out on Raw. Triple H tried to stop and said, "Hey, man, calm down." He's like, no. He just could not be bothered. Okay? He was pissed. Undertaker would not accept this challenge. So then, we get to Elimination Chamber 2010. The final two guys left in the main event are who? Undertaker, Chris Jericho. Undertaker was the reigning WWE champion, or WWE World Heavyweight Champion at the time, the SmackDown champion. A few months prior, he had defeated CM Punk in Hell in a Cell to win the title. I was actually there live for that. And who should come out under the ring in a trademark Undertaker move? None other than Shawn Michaels, who hit the Sweet Chin music on The Undertaker, allowing his blood rival, the man who punched his wife in the face, Chris Jericho, to pin The Undertaker to win the world title. Shawn Michaels was so goddamn adamant to face The Undertaker at WrestleMania that he was willing to allow his heated, most hated rival to pin him in order to get The Undertaker to accept the challenge. Shawn Michaels put his career on the line. Those two had the very last match at WrestleMania 26, which is a great WrestleMania, by the way. Go back and watch it. And that was it for Shawn Michaels. Bell to bell, I don't know if it was as good as Undertaker versus Michaels at WrestleMania 25. But my God, this was some great stuff at WrestleMania 26. And at the end, Shawn Michaels, as defiant as ever, taunted The Undertaker. Undertaker put the horse out to the pasture, put him out of his misery. 1, 2, 3. But it doesn't end there. Because who is Shawn Michaels' best friend? And his DX stablemate? Triple H. And at WrestleMania 27, these two guys saved what was a pretty bad WrestleMania in Atlanta, Georgia in 2011. Featured The Rock hosting the show, The Miz and John Cena in the main event, which was just awful. I mean, Miz also suffered a concussion in the match, so kind of some slack. But not a good WrestleMania from top to bottom. But Undertaker and Triple H, just great stuff. It was set up when Undertaker made his return randomly on Raw. Triple H interrupted him. They both just stared each other down and then looked at the WrestleMania sign, and that set up the match. And it was just one of the best segments ever. Two icons in the business, right? Just looking at the WrestleMania sign, saying, hey, let's give the fans what they want. And they did in this match. Great stuff. Triple H used a sledgehammer. He tried to defeat The Undertaker with it. He had, I think he gave him like a spine buster through the coal mine, which at the time was Michael Cole's little hub where he did his own commentary as a heel. Oh, those are some bad memories on commentary. But this match was just epic itself. And it was notable because Undertaker won this with the Hell's Gate. Triple H tried to go for the sledgehammer. Undertaker ended up choking him out. Got the win. But Undertaker could barely get to the back, which set up Triple H versus Undertaker again for the third time at WrestleMania 28. End of an era match. Hell in a Cell. Shawn Michaels was a special referee. Was there going to be a secret plan in place? Well, if there was, it sure wasn't executed that great because Undertaker ended up beating Triple H in Hell in a Cell. This was also a great match. I actually like the WrestleMania 27 match more, but I love this match in a sense because it was just three legends being the best they can be. Shawn Michaels, of course, limited to a referee role, but still great stuff. And at the end, there's an iconic shot of all three guys helping each other up at the ramp, just posing in front of the crowd. And I really genuinely believe that this should have been the retirement match of The Undertaker. This should have been the retirement of Triple H. And this is already kind of the end of Shawn Michaels, but really maybe the end of him getting involved physically in angles for a while. This is awesome. Awesome. Of course, Triple H and Undertaker didn't bother retiring. And then we had WrestleMania 29. I was in attendance for this. Not a great WrestleMania. Very overbooked. Some matches were rushed. You got to remember, this was at the time. Actually, this is the last time that the WWE had a traditional WrestleMania before the network. And it was Undertaker versus CM Punk. Great match. At the moment, it's Undertaker's last great match at WrestleMania. And he got the win here via Tombstone. CM Punk was just a great heel. He had stolen Paul Bearer's urn. This came shortly after Paul Bearer passed away. I didn't like the build for this match that much because it resulted in Undertaker paying tribute to Paul Bearer only for CM Punk to interrupt and insult the memory of Paul Bearer. And I know it's wrestling and everything, but I just felt like it was pretty tasteless stuff. But the match itself was great. CM Punk was his damn best as a heel with Paul Heyman in his corner. And Undertaker got the win. And actually, now thinking about it, this was actually, as of press time, as of 2018, this was CM Punk's last WrestleMania. What a way to go out, right? Facing The Undertaker, having a great match. Loved this match. That saved the show. That was otherwise kind of forgettable. And then WrestleMania 30. This match, what can I say? This was when 21-0 became 21-1. Brock Lesnar got the pin. I believe he had hit a third F5. Match itself was nothing special. It was not that great. Undertaker had the mohawk. He had the, kind of like the goatee, but he shaved the mustache. He looked really, really old in this match. And I'm just talking about looks-wise. He just looked really old. Undertaker actually, had the mohawk, kind of like the little mini mohawk, like shaved head deal, and back in WrestleMania 29 as well. So he had that WrestleMania 29. He had that WrestleMania 28. Yeah, I don't know how I felt about that whole, shaved look and everything. Wasn't, looking at the pictures, wasn't necessarily a great look for him, but it seemed like he was having trouble, continuing to maintain his long hair. I guess when you get older, the hair just, it's harder to grow back, right? So he had that hair. He rocked it. He did his thing. He owned it. It was a little Chuck Liddell hairstyle. Unfortunately, he kind of wrestled like Chuck Liddell when he fought at the end. Not very good. But this match is not really remembered for the quality of the match. It's not even remembered for how old The Undertaker looked. It's remembered for Brock Lesnar pinning The Undertaker in the middle of the ring. 1, 2, 3 to end the streak. This featured a standing ovation. Undertaker just in the ring, slowly walking out. And it's kind of sad because Undertaker actually suffered a severe concussion in the match. If I recall correctly, it was a pretty bad concussion. Obviously, it wasn't severe enough to keep him out of the ring the next year, but it was a bad concussion. And maybe that's why the match quality suffered. And Undertaker actually had to go to the hospital right afterwards. Vince McMahon rode with him to the hospital. So that was serious stuff. And after that, the Undertaker's WrestleMania legacy, I don't know. I don't want to say it faded, but how do I say it, man? The matches just didn't mean as much anymore, right? WrestleMania 31, he took on Bray Wyatt, the home of Seth Rollins, cashing in the Money in the Bank during Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. I thought this match wasn't that good. Undertaker, Bray Wyatt. I think the one silver lining about this match was the fact that it was nice to see The Undertaker look relatively healthy by Undertaker standards, right? And actually move around okay and look a little bit younger than he did the previous year because he actually had hair in his head. But it wasn't that great of a match. Now, the following year, 2016, WrestleMania 32, he took on Shane McMahon. It was Shane McMahon's first WWE appearance in years, since 2009. And the match itself also wasn't that great. It was a Hell in a Cell match, where if Shane McMahon lost, he would have to leave WWE. If he won, he'd get some control of WWE. Funny thing is, Shane McMahon did lose this match, and he still got to maintain a little bit of control of Raw and then later SmackDown. So that shows what happens with stipulations. But this match is remembered for one spot and one spot only. Shane McMahon going up top, diving off the cell, crashing and burning through the table. Undertaker pinning him 1, 2, 3. I didn't like this match. I thought the stunt with Shane McMahon was cool, although something that a 46-year-old man shouldn't have been doing at the time, or ever. And, I mean, what can I say? The fans seem to like this match. So, even though I may be in the minority, and I didn't personally like this match and everything, and I'm the one hosting this show, I'll cut it some slack because a lot of fans liked it. And not only that, but it seemed to move ticket sales and move the needle in terms of fan interest. So I got to give both men their props, especially Shane McMahon. That being said, I didn't need to see him diving off a Hell in a Cells ever again after that. And unfortunately, he would in a match with Kevin Owens where he damn near killed himself. So, Shane, lay off the damn cells. And then we had WrestleMania 33, which is going to wrap up this episode, where he lost to Roman Reigns in the very last match of WrestleMania 33, Orlando, Florida. This seemed like it was going to be the end of The Undertaker. I thought this should have been the end. It was very sad to watch. Undertaker moved like crap, and this is coming from somebody that's a huge Undertaker fan. He did not look good here. Roman Reigns, this poor guy, had to tough task of carrying this dude, a 52-year-old man who's just broken down and beat up. It was not good at all. But I will say this. The fans love the Undertaker character so much that even though this match took place damn near at midnight after 7 hours of WrestleMania, ridiculously long show, longest WrestleMania of all time, longest WWE show of all time. Even though it took place so late in the show, there got to a point where Undertaker kicked out of Roman Reigns' spear, and the crowd popped, and the crowd wanted to see the old gunslinger get one more win at WrestleMania. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be, and it led to a very memorable shot where Roman Reigns celebrated at the ramp, fireworks played. He kind of looked like almost like a comic book villain, and Undertaker's just sitting there, solemn, knowing that at the moment, it is now Roman Reigns' yard. And afterwards, Undertaker put his gear back on again, took it off, left it in the ring, kissed his real-life wife, Michelle McCool, at ringside, and raised his fist and lowered down. And that was the end of WrestleMania 33. And I thought that meant Undertaker's done. I thought, what? Listen, his legacy's intact. Even though his recent WrestleMania matches weren't that good, his legacy's intact. But at the time I'm recording this, he's set to wrestle John Cena for the very first time at WrestleMania. Not the first time ever, but the first time at WrestleMania 34. And based on John Cena's pay-per-view history, I think he can have a great match with The Undertaker. And I think The Undertaker can just do enough. But I do hope for their sake they leave it short and sweet. Maybe 15 minutes. Play the greatest hits. Old school. AA. Tombstone. Flying clothesline. Whatever. Just leave it at that. Keep it short and sweet. And hopefully it won't take place super late in the show. We'll see what happens. But overall, I mean, you look at this WrestleMania legacy, man. I mean, it's just unbelievable. This is unbelievable. 25 WrestleMania appearances, going on 26, 23-2. Had the last match at WrestleMania 13. Had the last match at WrestleMania 24. Last match, WrestleMania 26. Last match, WrestleMania 33. And if you really think about it, he was more or less the main event of WrestleMania 32 with Shane McMahon and The Undertaker. And look at who he's beaten. Look at the who's who of who he's beaten, right? Okay, I'm going to go over this one more time. Jimmy Snuka, Jake Roberts, King Kong Bundy, Kevin Nash, Psycho Sid, Kane twice, Triple H thrice, Big Boss Man, Nature Boy Ric Flair, Big Show and A-Train, Mark Henry, new WWE Hall of Famer, Batista, Edge, Shawn Michaels twice, CM Punk, Bray Wyatt, Shane McMahon. If that's not a resume for perhaps the greatest WWE superstar in WrestleMania history, I don't know what is. But folks, I would love to hear from you. Do you think The Undertaker is the greatest WrestleMania superstar of all time? Let me know in the comments section. You can hit me up on Twitter at Sports Courier or Facebook, facebook.com/The Sports Courier. You can also hit us up on Instagram at TSC News. And if you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button. Please share this with all your friends. Please subscribe because there's more Greatest Superstars of WrestleMania History videos coming your way. And until next time, as always, enjoy the matches and rest in peace.